the truth is when you're not specific about why an expectation is important, why it matters, it's hard to even know what the right consequence should be.
Hi, I'm Veronica Cisneros, licensed marriage and family therapist, entrepreneur, and host of the Empowered and Unapologetic podcast. I was 1 month away from divorce. The court papers were filed. We had just had our first daughter, and I felt more alone than ever. My husband told me he was tired of competing with my career. I was overwhelmed, disconnected from my family, and questioning everything I had built. I didn't want to lose my marriage, but I also didn't want to keep losing myself. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I stopped pointing fingers and started doing the work on me. Now, after 25 plus years of marriage, raising 3 daughters, and running a thriving therapy practice, I'm here to help you do the same. This podcast is for the woman who looks like she has it all together, but secretly feels like she's falling apart. We're talking real marriage struggles, parenting teens, rebuilding trust, reclaiming identity, and finally feeling like you again. Pull up a seat. You don't have to figure it out alone. This is Empowered and Unapologetic. Have you ever found yourself saying yes to something to your teen or adult child, even though every part of you wanted to say no? Or maybe you've set a boundary, a real one, from the heart, and the second they pushed back, you caved. Not because you're weak, but because you're scared of losing them. If you've ever felt torn between protecting your peace and keeping the relationship, then this episode is for you. I'm Veronica Cisneros, therapist, mom, wife, and entrepreneur, and I know how gut-wrenching it can feel when your kids start pulling away. You're doing everything you can to hold the family together, but somewhere along the line, you stopped holding yourself together. So today, we're going to talk about something that moms rarely admit out loud: setting boundaries with the people we love the most, our teens and adult children. Although it feels impossibly hard, we're going to do this today because we're terrified of hurting the relationship, and that's not going to serve us. My guest today is Jennifer Collins, a master life coach and founder of The Small Jar. She helps moms of teens and young adults release the anxiety of holding on too tightly and embrace the freedom that comes with letting their children soar. Through her signature program, Mom 2.0, she teaches women how to set boundaries that actually work, navigate the heartbreak of kids pulling away, and create peace and connection without needing their children to change. She also hosts the Almost Empty Nest podcast, where she guides moms through the emotional roller coaster of this next chapter with compassion, clarity, and courage. As a mom of 2 college-age sons, she gets the pride, the grief, and the fear that come with watching your kids step into adulthood. By the end of this conversation, you'll learn why boundaries with teens and adult kids feel uniquely painful, how to set consequences that actually stick without guilt or drama, and how to create emotional safety for yourself even when your kids pull away. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Veronica.
Absolutely. So let's start here. Why is it so much harder to set boundaries with our teens and our adult children than with anyone else in our lives?
Well, I think the truth is, I mean, we all know as moms, we care so much about our kids. It's almost
Yeah,
like they're an extension of us and our heart. And so
yeah,
it's always been true that we care about them. We care about the type of people we are. We care about them being safe. We care about them and their success. And so everything about our kids and their well-being is so intrinsically important to us. And so of course it matters. And
yeah,
and so setting boundaries with them, it feels like it's a really high stakes
yeah,
situation. Like there's a
yeah.
lot on the line here.
I struggle with, like, I find myself struggling. I have three daughters, 23, 18, and 15. And I struggle with all of them differently. My oldest, she's a lot more receptive to any boundaries I set. My middle one, I call her Porcupine for a reason. There is some heightened level of resistance, and I find
Mhm.
myself fine. Right now, she's a college student. She's going to the University of Alabama, and I find myself going, huh, where does it hurt the most? Oh, the pockets. The pocket definitely hurts more. And then with my little one, my little monkey feet, I struggle because she is so sensitive. Like
Mhm.
so, so sensitive. And there's so many emotions there. And I feel like I want to keep her innocence. And at the same time, when she gets frustrated with me, I call her an angry elf. Um, but it's just like, oh, I don't want to hurt her feelings either. And so it's like, oh, it's so, so hard. It's
Yeah,
so hard.
absolutely. Well, and what you just shared, I mean, I think it's a perfect example of how each one of our kids is different.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to compare to even our friends who talk about their kids. And when we read about on parenting blogs, this is how you set a boundary. There's not a one size fits all solution to any of our kids. And so I think it becomes hard because it's not clear what the steps are that you should be taking. And you also, I think the bottom line is we as moms feel so much emotion. You know, you mentioned a number of times I feel like I struggle. And the reality is we have a lot we want to get it right. We want to
Yeah.
retain our relationship with them. We want to empower them, but also set them on the right direction. And so
Yes.
we have a lot of our own personal, I think, fear and frustration and all of that tied into it. And when you think about it, that makes it even harder to move forward with boundaries because we are dealing with our own emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. I hear moms say, I know I should say no, but what if they stop talking to me? Why does fear of disconnection make us abandon our boundaries so quickly?
Well, I mean, of course, we all want a strong relationship with our kids, and I think it's very typical for us to take it personally or think that if our kids are feeling defensive or reacting to a boundary that we set, that we've somehow done it wrong, or that we're really risking some type of rift in the relationship. And I
Yep.
think that's the place where, and look, I coach a lot of moms who have ended up in a really painful dynamic of power struggles with their kids because we can often, especially with those boundaries that don't stick, and then, you know, we find ourselves taking the phone or threatening more consequences. And so none of us want to go down that path of this kind of repeated power struggle that does feel like it damages the relationship. And
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
you know, what we're seeing, it feels like it's really real. And so which is why I keep coming back to the boundaries that you set really have to come from a place where we're grounded first.
Yeah. No. Emotions get too involved and then we lose sight of what we're really, really trying to communicate. You talk about the heartbreak of kids pulling away. For the mom listening who feels ignored, dismissed, or shut out, how can she set boundaries without making the distance worse?
Well, it's such a great question. I mean, I think about this relationship that you have that's so important to you. And there's nothing you want more than to have a close connected relationship. In fact, I just got off a call with a woman who, you know, her kids are doing great and they're thriving in life, and yet they don't connect with her in the way that she wants. And she worries that they're entitled, and she wants so much to just have a relationship that she perceives other people are having, right? We compare
Yeah.
ourselves to others, so that other people are coming home and having this great relationship with their moms, but my kids have their headphones on and they're ignoring me, and it feels terrible. And so I do think that there's a sadness that starts with us that we really have to honor that sometimes the relationship doesn't look like what we want. And I think it's
Yeah.
particularly true when we think about how close and connected we felt with our kids when they were little, and they kind of loved us with abandon, and the hugs were easy and it felt so good to be in that relationship. There was a lot of validation there that I
Yeah.
don't even think we as moms fully recognized how much we benefited from that, and how much it felt like we were doing the right thing because our kids were giving us that affirmation. And when our kids start to pull away, we can't help but make it mean something about us, and feel as if somehow it's a um, that they're responding to us, or pushing us personally away, when truly, and I think we all know this intellectually, but our kids are trying so hard to be their own independent person. And so it can feel really personal when they push us away, and sometimes they say things that are hard
Yeah.
to mistake as not pushing us away, or
Yes.
them thinking it's our fault. And so being really grounded in your love for your kid, and giving them space to be who they are, while also being willing to set boundaries around what type of behavior you're going to tolerate,
Hmm.
what type of direction you need to give, and if necessary, what types of consequences you would enact if they were reacting in a way that was beyond the line of
Yeah.
acceptability.
Yeah. Boundaries mean nothing without consequences, but consequences feel cruel when it's your child. How do we create consequences that are loving, firm, and respectful?
Well, I think the interesting thing about consequences, which is, I think, the first problem I often see with women around consequences is they think that the goal of the boundary is to get somebody else to change, to get our
Hmm.
kids to change their behavior. And
Yeah.
of course, when the behavior is inappropriate, that's kind of where you're going to go first, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking this behavior is inappropriate. I need to set some consequences. I need to communicate what's appropriate. But the problem is when they don't respond. Like, say you tell your kid, my classic example with my boys was always, as soon as my oldest got his license, we set a curfew, which was actually a state mandated curfew, and he never hit it. Like, not once, right? Just And so time
Oh,
after time after time, he would come home, and I was like, what? And meanwhile, I'm staying up late, waiting,
yeah.
it's
Can't
after
sleep.
midnight, and
Following them
I'm,
on Life 360.
oh,
Yeah.
come, and or texting him, when are you gonna go? And I see that he's not even in the car yet on his way
No,
home, right?
no, no.
So I remember back in that time, I would get so triggered by his lack of respect of the boundary, right? And so there was the first kind of sign that something was amiss with the boundary, right? Because here I was letting him take the car, which was not his car, every night, and he was repeatedly blowing through the boundary. And every night he'd come home and I would be yelling at him,
Yeah.
threatening consequences. But then the next night he would go out in the same pattern. So a couple things were happening here. One, as you pointed out, it's so easy to threaten a consequence or tell your kid
Yeah.
that they're not doing it right, and then refuse to follow through on the consequence, right? So
Hmm.
very clearly in that situation, I could have just taken the car. And eventually, it does go to that place, but really in starting to think through, what are the consequences that are actually in my control to implement here, right? Because
Hmm.
they're, especially now that my kids are in their 20s, the consequences look a lot different than they
Yeah.
might have with a 15-year-old, where you have a lot more control of the levers,
Yeah.
which is why I think it's really valuable with your boundaries, before you even go to consequences, to be really clear and specific about what you want and what expectation you're trying to meet. And I think this applies to anything, whether you're talking about your kid pulling away and you want to have more connection with them, or something where they're breaking a rule and you need them to follow the rule. you
Hmm.
know because when I work with moms, I think what we typically will have trigger points of, I don't have many expectations, but there are these ones. But as you talk it out, the truth is we have so many expectations for
Yeah.
everyone in our life, right? Everything with
Absolutely.
our kids, it's everything from the type of person they are and the way they speak to us and how many words they say in a conversation, to whether or not they're studying and what that looks like and how many hours they should be doing and the grades. And
Hmm.
when you really start to think about how many expectations you have for your kids, And then you see how you inadvertently are policing all of those expectations. First of all, it's very easy for us as moms to feel like we're failing because
Yeah.
we're policing a lot of expectations. Meanwhile, our kids can feel like they're constantly failing as well because we're always pointing
Yes.
out how you're disappointing me in not so many words. And so it's really valuable to get clear on your expectation, clarifying why it matters to you. You know, school is a perfect example. I'll often work with women who say, you know, I feel like my kid has so much more potential and they're not living up to it. And that's a very frustrating thing because, of course,
Yes.
again, as a mom, you want your kid to be successful. So if you don't see them meeting some threshold of trying their best, whatever
Yep.
that looks like, but think about it. It's like many times we'll say, well, if I really knew they were trying their best, I would be okay with a B, but I don't think they are. So I think they should be
No.
working more. But see
Yeah.
how unspecific that is, right? And so when you say to your kid, I want you to try harder, it's like, how could they prove that to you, right? So it really gets complicated. And I know you started the question with consequences, but the truth is, when you're not specific about why an expectation is important, why it matters, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to even know what the right consequence should be.
Yep. Yep. So let's make this real. If a teen speaks disrespectfully, if an adult child only calls when they need something, if they ignore a rule or expectation, what does a healthy, grounded boundary look like? And how do we put this into action? So I guess we could pick one of these. So let's do if I'll go back to the expectation. I love how you brought that up, and I think that's a big one that we need to break down. If they ignore a rule or expectation, so let's go back to your example. What would be, how do we start the process? What is that like? What is the first step all the way to the last step look like?
For sure. Okay, so I can talk about my son and his breaking through the driving boundary, right? So clearly what I was doing was threatening consequences and yelling and screaming at midnight, and that wasn't working. Right.
Yeah.
So first of all, getting clear about what I want and why that's an expectation. Well, so for me, it was actually a state mandated curfew. It was 11 p.m., which frankly, I probably would have let him stay out later, to be honest, if it wasn't a state
Yeah.
mandated curfew. But
Yeah.
because it was a state mandated curfew, he was blowing through it and risked losing his license as a brand new driver. So the interesting thing about that is the line that he was crossing was clear. And in fact, I didn't even necessarily need to be the one to enforce it because this would have been enforced by a police officer had he been pulled over at night.
Yeah.
So you almost notice how part of my reaction was a fear of natural consequences for my son. I
Gotcha.
was afraid that he was going to lose his license, which
Yeah.
you could argue might be a great learning lesson for your child if you were willing to let them face natural consequences. I realized that was something that I was fighting against, right?
Trying to
So
prevent.
being
Mm-hmm.
honest with yourself is so helpful. So in a calm moment, understanding that my clear why was, honey, I want you to be a safe driver, obviously, and I respect that you want to go out later, but this is a state mandated curfew. So let's work together to figure out how to come home at the right time.
Yeah.
And then if I really felt like I needed to be the one to layer on my own consequence, I could have been willing to say, you cannot have the car if you continue to blow through that boundary, because that's a consequence that's actually in my power. So you gave the example of, you know, say college kid not calling home enough, right? And that's another one that comes up quite a bit with my
I'd
clients.
like, you know what? I'd actually like to change that one. I want to make this
Yeah.
one real.
Okay.
So, well, we're on it. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
So, my daughter, my beautiful porcupine again. Um, so my daughter, I'll give you two examples, but I'll give you the one that we're struggling with.
Okay.
So she was, when she first started back in August, she goes to the University of Alabama. So we're in California. That's very far from here. So initially she would call us and say, I would call her and, hey, baby, how are you doing? She's like, I'm fine. And it's like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be in class. She's like, oh, no, mom. My friend's in class and she's videotaping or recording the lecture. And I was like, that's cute because I'm paying for you to go to school, not your friends. And so we ended up establishing some healthy boundaries with what this looks like, what our expectations were, what our fears were. And then we, because we are paying for it. And so we thought, okay, well, you're going to pay for it too. So for every minute you're late, because it started to become a little bit of a habit. Luckily, we caught it early. So for every minute you're late, that's $5 that you're contributing to your college tuition. And so moving forward, she was never late. It wasn't happening at all. She was sending us pictures, locations. And now all of a sudden, she's getting towards the end of her first semester. She's getting all of these extra bonus points because her teachers love her. She's the only one to class on time. And she's the only one getting all of this extra credit because she's there. So now let me go to the area where we're struggling with.
And first, I just want to point out what I love about that boundary is it was clearly tied. I mean, what you gave her natural consequences of not going to class, because if it wasn't enough, the incentive to get good grades, it was like, look, then you're going to have to pay. And that's something that I presume that you could enforce, which was beautiful. I love it.
Well, this is where I struggle, Jennifer.
5 gold stars all around so far. So.
Nothing breaks my heart more than watching women pour into everyone else and feel like they've completely lost themselves in the process. That's why I have founded Outside the Norm Counseling, because therapy shouldn't feel like one more thing on your to-do list. It should feel like relief. I'm Veronica Cisneros, licensed marriage and family therapist and host of the Empowered and Unapologetic podcast. And I know what it's like to look around at your life and think, why does everything feel fine, but feel so off? At Outside the Norm Counseling, we help women who are high functioning on the outside, but silently falling apart inside. Women who are waking up overwhelmed, snapping at the people they love, and carrying guilt that never seems to lift. And if you're not ready for therapy, that's okay. Let's start small. With my self-paced course, Reignite Your Marriage and Reclaim Your Identity. This is for you, not your husband. Because when you reconnect with yourself, everything else begins to shift. Head to OutsideTheNormCounseling.com to start. Remember, you don't have to keep holding it all together. You just have to take the first step. So this is where I struggle. So my daughter, she is the biggest part and the biggest reason she joined, or she wanted to go to the University of Alabama, is because of the college life, full college life. Their football games are next level. Their sororities, they live in mansions. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. So my beautiful porcupine, and I'm sure with all college students, is now dabbling with drinking. Mm-hmm. Now, as a therapist, I don't want my daughter to drink. And I also recognize that I don't want to say it's part of the college experience, but I recognize that, I don't want to say kids are going to be kids, but I recognize that it's also, I'd be foolish to believe that it's not going to happen. So there have been times where it's like, whoa, we're partying a little bit too hard. Mm-hmm. 3 tequila shots probably isn't safe. And making sure she's in a group of her friends. All of her friends are in the same sorority. They all look out for each other, which is great. But my greatest fear is somebody taking advantage of her. Mm-hmm. As a licensed clinician, I hear about that more times than I'd like to admit. And so I'm just going to break it down, just how you have shared so far. Like, the expectation is for my daughter, if she is going to choose to drink, to make sure she makes healthy choices. Mm-hmm. And knows when maybe enough is too much, and then making sure that she is very mindful of her surroundings, because of course she's going to clubs, she's going to frat parties, and so those are, and then my fear is her having her drink spiked, because that does happen. There's a lot of spiking drinks. A lot of it was also part of, like, I heard with several colleges, I'm not sure if it's with Alabama, but that is part, I've heard that that's part of, like, even like the recruitment process. And so that's a great fear of mine. We've bought her testers and things to test her drinks. So yeah, getting her to be mindful and to really acknowledge, like, some of the consequences of maybe, drinking irresponsibly.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And from what everything you've shared, I imagine you've had a number of conversations with your
Oh,
daughter already
girl.
about this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Mom,
Yeah.
I'm fine. I didn't know Red Bull and vodka was, a recipe for a heart attack. I know now, Mom, so I won't drink that. Okay. Okay, that one's checked off the box. Let's go ahead and check some other ones off the box, right?
Absolutely. Well, and even giving her some practical strategies. I understand there's even like a nail polish that you can put in a drink that
Yes.
changes colors.
Yes, girl.
So,
Listen, Jennifer, we have all of the
yeah.
things. All of the things.
So, I mean, once again, you have done, it sounds like, everything in your power, short of bringing her back home and not allowing her to go to
I've thought
college,
about it. I've thought about it.
right? And so here's the beauty of this example that you just shared, is that there's so many areas of our kids' lives, especially once they get to college and they're out of our house, where we don't have control, right?
Yeah.
And you have set your daughter up for success. You've shared with her the risks. You've empowered her with tools to be able to protect herself. You're reminding her. And short of calling her and texting her every single time she goes out, which
Yeah.
has its own challenges, because now
Yep.
you're driving yourself crazy,
Yeah.
risking
And
her,
impacting the relationship.
yeah,
Yeah.
not
Not
one, and
trusting her.
risking them not being honest with you because you're
Yes.
micromanaging, right? And it doesn't sound like you're doing any of that. So the challenge with these types of boundaries is we can have all of the expectations and hopes and dreams we want for our kids, but when we don't have the power to control the situations they're in or the way they conduct themselves when they're not with us, the boundary you have to set is with yourself. And really
Gosh, why can't they? Jennifer, I would take a 2-year-old. I take 4 2-year-olds. I would take 4 2-year-olds over a college student. So you
this
moms
is
that
why
have
it's so
2-year-olds, it's a
hard.
blessing.
Oh, I was
Yeah, I
doing a
love that you
coach
said that.
it's just, I was doing a coaching workshop, and we were talking about something similar, and she said, "Oh, is that why raising older kids is so hard?" It was like it just clicked for me.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so hard. It's setting that boundary of trusting that you have given your daughter everything
yes,
she needs to be responsible, that you've reminded her, that you've shown her love and given her all of those tools, and knowing that that is enough and that you can't do more. And it's holding space for your own worry, which is so normal and natural. Of course, we're
yeah.
going to worry about our kids, especially when they're out in the wild doing things that we wish they wouldn't be doing, putting
Mhm,
themselves in
mhm.
situations we wish they wouldn't. And it's always great when you see your kid putting themselves in situations with friends where they're protecting themselves, and really also opening your eyes to the possibility that she really has listened, and looking for that evidence too, because I think
Yeah,
sometimes what we do is we're so focused on our fear that it's like confirmation bias. Every time we call, it's like we hear one more night they went out, we're like, oh god, here we go again, versus the little bits of information where she said, well, we all went out in a group and we all came home together, and
yeah,
reinforcing those moments, even in your own mind, of saying, I have taught her well.
yeah. Ah.
Yeah.
So the boundaries within myself, can you break that down?
Yeah. So really it's understanding. I mean, I think the start to every boundary is actually setting a boundary with yourself. It's understanding your expectations, understanding your why behind those expectations, understanding the emotion that comes up for you when reality doesn't meet your expectations.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and this is true in your marriage, this is true with your mother in law, this is true with every person in your life, people just aren't very good at meeting our expectations.
Yeah.
And so when they don't, when we have an expectation and reality doesn't meet it, it's being really clear about understanding part of the reason this feels so uncomfortable for me right now is simply because reality doesn't meet my expectations.
Yes.
And so understanding, is that actually a problem that I need to solve, or is this just an emotion I need to feel?
Can you say that again? I
So
love that you said that.
so understanding, is this a problem that I need to solve, or is this just an emotion I need to feel?
Yes.
And with
Yes.
your daughter, as a perfect example, let's say that you're also observing her making good choices, and although she's going out and she's partying a bit, that she continues to affirm that she's heard what you've shared and that she's making those good choices. It's understanding that you really can take in the possibility that you have done all that you can do, and that what's left is I have to sit with the discomfort of the fears I have in my mind about what could happen, but that
Yeah.
those fears aren't true just because they're rattling around in my brain, keeping me up at night when I think
Yeah.
about where she is on Saturday.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that because one thing that I've been really, really working on is, at the end of the day, like, homegirl has straight A's. I think
Mhm.
she has like one B, and she's
Mm.
taking 16 units, Jennifer.
Wow.
16.
Amazing.
16. She's a political science major. And it's like,
Wow.
okay, hold on. Whenever I do get to where I'm like not sleeping and checking, it's like, okay, hold on. What have you taught her?
Yeah.
And I love that you said go back to recognizing you don't have control over this. And so feel the emotion.
Mm.
And it is scary. It is so scary,
Yeah.
because I remember being that age and it's like, oh, I'm invincible, right?
Yeah.
And some of the things she says, it's like, oh shit, yeah. No, you're not invincible. However, at the end of the day, if I do, and I appreciate you just walking me through that, because now it's like, okay, hold on, Veronica, you have taught her to be independent. And that's what you want at the end. You do want her to be independent. So
Yes.
this is part of it. And you can't, I think the biggest emotion that I need to sit with is powerless. I
Mhm.
cannot keep her from enduring pain
Yeah.
and learning lessons.
Yeah.
Gosh, I hate that part.
It is so hard. In fact, I was going to record a podcast. This has been coming up so much. I think that feeling of powerlessness, I think, is one of those core emotions that are part of this stage of motherhood that is really hard to sit with. And
Yeah.
what we typically react when we feel that way, we react with this like urgent need to
Yep.
change the circumstances, to get our kid to do something different. And sometimes that's valuable to do. For example, you telling your daughter, this is how to be safe. Here are some tools for you to make sure. I don't subscribe to a philosophy with my kids where I'm just going to say, well, I'm powerless and I can't do anything.
Yeah. Oh, hell no. No,
I
that's
don't
not,
think I don't
it's
think
too
any
far.
mom would sign up for that, right? But it's holding space for the things that you can't control, but then being very intentional with what you can control. So part
Yeah.
of that is the way that you communicate with your daughter, the way you empower her, and understanding that she's going to take or leave your advice, but you can continue to show up with love and reminders and believing in her, and even reflecting back, sweetheart, you are crushing it at school. Like, focusing as much on all the things she's doing right as the things that you hope to steer her in the right direction around,
Yeah.
but also just being so clear with yourself that ultimately where we have so much more power than we think we do is over really processing our own emotions and holding space for the painful parts, but also allowing ourselves to embrace those emotions where it's like on top of, next to the worry that I feel for my daughter is this immense pride and joy in seeing her be independent and self
Yeah.
actualize. And when you really see how deep that human experience is and appreciate both sides of it fully, it actually is so beautiful, where the
Yeah.
powerlessness becomes a counterpoint to, and I have raised and launched this beautiful child.
Yes. Yes. That's so beautiful. Yes. Jennifer, when kids don't need us the same way anymore, a lot of women feel invisible. How can boundary setting become a pathway back to identity and self respect?
Yeah, and this becomes back to this boundaries with yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
we so often think that other people make us feel a certain way or the circumstances of our life feel a certain way. And really understanding at the end of the day, the reason why we love and are so connected to our kids is because of the stories we have in our heads about what they mean to us, right? And those stories are beautiful and we wouldn't trade them for anything. But our kids also aren't there to create our validation and our sense of
Yeah.
wholeness. And so, really understanding that, I think this transition to them becoming independent and figuring out who they are is such a beautiful opportunity for us to start saying, I need to tap into who I want to be here. What
Mm-hmm.
type of mom do I want to be as my child launches? Do I want to be the one who is holding on to them and needing them to respond to me in a certain way? Or can I invite that connection with love so that they want to come back and feel like it's a
Yeah.
reciprocal relationship? It's also about deciding, what kind of woman do I want to be? What kind of life do I want to create for myself? And so many of us, when we're raising kids, we're in the thick of it. Even when we work full time and we're raising kids, it can be so easy to lose track of who you are independent from all of that,
Yep.
because life is triage when you're raising younger kids, and and
Mm-hmm.
and being having teenagers in the house. It's like emotionally taxing. So you feel like you don't have the bandwidth to take a step back and say, okay, but what do I want for myself? How do I
Yeah.
create that within myself, rather than needing things outside of me to affirm that for me? And that really is the work of, I think, this stage.
Yes. Beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. Finally, what is one thing you want women to know about the importance of boundaries for themselves and for others?
I think it's understanding boundaries are not about getting somebody else to change. Boundaries are about deciding how you show up in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's truly about, will I accept this behavior or not? How am I going to respond if I receive it? If there's a situation that I feel like I'm not comfortable with, what is in my power to communicate about that, to walk away from? It's really in making those intentional decisions for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
understanding, even if someone continues to cross a line and not respect a boundary that you have, the power that you have is in continuing to decide how you show up
Yeah.
again and again and again. And when you really think about that, that is always in your power. So that is really what it's about. Understanding it's not about getting someone else to change. It's about understanding how you're going to show up no matter what that other person does.
What I love about this conversation is that it reminds us of something we forget as moms. Setting a boundary isn't pushing your child away, it's pulling yourself back into your own life. Boundaries with teens and adults, kids are not about control, they're about connection. Real connection, the kind that builds respect, not guilt, on truth, not fear. And yes, it's hard. It feels like standing on the edge of who you were and who you're becoming. But this is where motherhood shifts into something new, something more honest, more grounded, and more feeling. Jennifer, where can our listeners find you?
Well, you can find my podcast, the Almost Empty Nest podcast, and I am at thesmalljar.com. And I have monthly master classes that I host where you can come and learn some of these skills, whether it's about setting boundaries or even just being the version of yourself that you want to be. So you can find all of that on my website, thesmalljar.com.
Jennifer, thank you so much. You've helped me personally, and I appreciate you for that, as well as I'm sure helps so many women just really understand like that connection between, wanting to change somebody else and then recognizing the fears that are hidden underneath all of that. I appreciate you for this.
Of course. Well, it's such a pleasure to be with you today. And I'm right there with you with a college kid, doing all the things in college. So believe me, I feel you.
I will be praying for you. I will
Yeah.
be praying for both of us.
Absolutely.
Raise your hand if you are ready to level up your marriage for 2023. Do you find that you're spending your time together with your husband checked out and in front of the TV? I know you're ready for tangible strategies that actually get you results. Reignite the spark in your marriage, have fun, and grow together. Well, I hope you have your hand raised at this minute because I have something special for you. I'm introducing my brand new 6-question marriage predictor quiz that's gonna give you personalized results to catapult you into the next stage of your marriage journey. That means you'll receive the results to where your marriage can get the best help. If you've got just 1 minute, head to veronicacisneros.org/quiz. Again, that's veronicacisneros.org/quiz, and you can take my brand new quiz, Marriage Predictor. Get your results delivered right to your email address. Again, that's veronicacisneros.org/quiz, veronicacisneros.org/quiz. What's up, ladies? Just want to let you guys know that your ratings and reviews for this podcast are greatly appreciated. If you love this podcast, please go to iTunes right now, write a review, rate the episode, and subscribe. Don't forget to share it with your friends.